Hey y'all, iRick Sky here, and within this video I'm going to explain how to choose the best watch size for your wrist. Now I've got a 7.5-inch wrist, and as you can see there, that's a 40mm timepiece on my wrist. So just kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. 40mm is often kind of this, I would say it's the new standard. In the past, 36mm for men was kind of the standard, and now I would say confidently that 40mm has become the new standard for men. Now, what I'm going to do within this video is I'm going to show you different sizes on my 7.5-inch wrist, so you can kind of have a visual of what it looks like. Now, keep in mind that not all of the same size timepieces wear the same. This is a 40mm, but I'm about to strap on another 40mm just so you can see how different styles of watches wear differently. So again, this is 40mm, but what I'm about to pop on here, this is also a 40mm. Now this is more of a dress style watch. Different things like the dial color. Now see, that's also a 40mm, just like the dive watch that I had on, but it wears completely differently. And part of that has to do with the fact that it's not as thick of a case. The case height isn't as much as the dive watch that I had on. There's other things that can affect the perceived wrist size of a watch. The color of the dial. This is a silver dial. Black and silver and white dials, they wear differently. A lighter colored dial is typically going to appear to be larger, even if it's not. Something to pay attention to are the lugs. The lugs, and then, again, also, like I said, the case thickness. That can affect how it how it looks on one's wrist. And what I'm going to do within this video is I'm going to hold this up next to the, and again, these are both 40mm timepieces, but see that? See how that the dive watch appears to be significantly larger? And that's interesting too, because typically a darker colored dial, like a black dial, would appear to be smaller. But, again, it has to do with the lugs. See how the lugs on the dive watch are wider, and obviously the case height, it's a lot taller case on the wrist. So there's a lot of things that can impact the way that it looks on the wearer's wrist. So those are 40mm, both 40mm. I'm going to take it off here, and we're going to jump up to a. This next one is almost a. It's almost a 43. It's a 42.7, but you can see it's got a significant case thickness there. So you can see here on my 7.5-inch wrist, that's a 42.7mm timepiece. Really good look. Doesn't look too commanding. Doesn't seem to overpower the wrist, but it definitely has substantial wrist presence on my 7.5-inch wrist. So that's a 42.3mm. You can see how it looks completely different than the previous two 40mm that I had on my wrist. So let's take this one off and let's jump up a little bit more. So now we're going to jump from, which this one was 42.3, we're going to jump up to a 44. So this is a 44mm. It is worth mentioning also the type of bracelet. Are you going to wear a bracelet or are you going to wear a strap? What's the color of the strap? Those things can impact the perceived size of the timepiece as well when it's on your wrist. Now this one, it's even got a greater height. So as far as, commanding wrist presence, this definitely has it. Again, the black, I've got it on the black rubber strap right now. But if I put it on a lighter colored, say a lighter colored leather strap, then it would give the illusion that the watch is even larger. But I think for my 7.5-inch wrist, obviously this is a bigger timepiece. It's meant to be big. I mean, this particular watch is something that's meant to be big. That's part of the draw to it. So you can see there on my 7.5-inch wrist, that's I don't feel that it's too big. I mean, obviously it's a more noticeable wrist piece than the examples I just showed a moment ago. So that's 44 millimeter. And now we're going to jump up to the biggest one. Now this one right here, this is a 48 millimeter. So I don't, at least for me, with my 7.5-inch wrist, I don't think I would go any larger than a 48. One of the famous, or I wouldn't say famous, but one of the most memorable moments I had with this timepiece, got it back in 2009, but when I was going through Puerto Rico, and one of the people stopped me, security people stopped me, and they went, "Hey, let me see that," and they took it off and they handled it, and I didn't care. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to hide anything. They're like, "Man, that's a boat anchor." Yeah, they referred to this as a boat anchor because it was so heavy. And I mean, obviously, this has a very commanding wrist presence, and the thickness of it is. See if I can get that in good focus for us there. Let's see. Let me bring it back out and back in. The thickness is, as you can see there, is very substantial. So, that's, if you want large wrist presence, this can definitely do it. Now I've got it on a kind of a semi-dark blue leather strap right now. If I put it on the stainless bracelet, it takes on a completely different appearance. The fact that it does have a black dial instead of a white or lighter colored dial makes it appear to be a little bit smaller than it actually is. So this particular timepiece, if you had it with a white or whatever you want to call it, polar dial, then it would appear to be even larger. So, again, with a 7.5-inch wrist, if you're looking for something that's very commanding on the wrist, this right here in 48 millimeter is, it seems to be very large. Now, and again, personal preference, some people may prefer a smaller watch, because in the past, especially smaller, around 36 millimeter was kind of the norm. And now, we've seen the trend go more towards 40 millimeter. I would say 40 millimeter is kind of the standard men's wristwatch size now. But again, to recap, several things can affect the perceived size of a timepiece on one's wrist: the color of the dial, the lugs. It's not just this is a 40 millimeter and this is a 40 millimeter, but the lugs and the height of the case, all of that come into play. The bracelet color, the strap color, all of that comes into play when it comes down to the perceived size of a timepiece on the wearer's wrist. And most importantly, just wear what feels the most comfortable for you, because there's nothing worse than getting a timepiece and it being uncomfortable. And there's, we'll go into this in other videos, but there's a lot of things that can impact the comfort of a wristwatch, beyond the size of it. So we'll go into that in another video. But tell me what you think. And again, I hope this video provided value. Again, I do have a 7.5-inch wrist. Your wrist size will drastically impact, the type of, the size of watch that is best for you. And, my best advice is always, go to the dealer, try it on, and, get a feel for what fits you the best. Because there's nothing worse than, than picking up a timepiece and putting it on your wrist and it looking like you wanted it to, but on your wrist it doesn't feel like you expected it to. So, for that reason, if you're shopping for timepieces, go to timepiecesfortomorrow.com, and I've got a ton of timepieces linked there. But again, I would encourage everyone, if you choose to buy pre-owned, go to that authorized dealer first and try on the various brands and references and see how they fit your wrist. And then that way, if you don't purchase from an authorized dealer, if you go the pre-owned route like timepiecesfortomorrow.com, you can at least know that, okay, my wrist is such and such size, and these are the brands and references that I tried on. Therefore, this timepiece may or may not work for me. It's always good to know, looking on your wrist, and not just yourself. Look in a mirror. If you're married or you got a girlfriend or multiple girlfriends or whatever, take them to the authorized dealer with you, and obviously don't have any money with you, so they try to buy something, you won't have any money to buy anything, but at least have them there for their opinion, and they can often provide solid advice, and sometimes the salespeople and authorized dealers will provide honest feedback, but there's also the salespeople within authorized dealers that are just there to push selling of whatever timepiece they want to try to sell. So, be careful about that. Trust your own judgment first. Trust the judgment, the opinions of people that you respect the most next. And then, last would be I would say the third would be the authorized dealer. And the authorized dealers, though, they can often steer you in directions that you were unaware of, different case shapes. All of these are round. I'm not personally a fan of rectangular watches, but some people are, and rectangular watches wear completely differently than round. So there's a lot of factors that come into play here. But yeah, again, 7.5-inch wrist. And before we go, I'm going to pop my 40 millimeter back on. So this was the largest at 48, and now we're gonna go back down to 40 millimeter. Again, arguably the new standard, I would say, size for men is 40 millimeter. This is 40 millimeter dive watch right here. So, just a really good wrist presence, but nothing too overpowering. I feel that 40 millimeter, I would say, is the new norm. I mean, unless there's a shift, there could be a shift back to the popularity of oversized watches like the 48 millimeter. But honestly, I don't think the shift is going to go back to smaller watches, like the 36 millimeter and the 34 millimeter for men. Now if you're a smaller person, 36 or 34 may be acceptable, but I think for men, 40 millimeter is probably going to remain the standard size. And then, a little bit larger, I would say for me with the 7.5-inch wrist, my ideal size is 40 to 42. This one at 42.7 is fine. This one at 44 is fine, but obviously once I jump beyond 42, it's a much more commanding wrist presence. If I'm sticking between, actually I would say and I don't have a 39 millimeter, but if I'm sticking, for me with the 7.5-inch wrist, if I'm sticking between 39 and 42, I would say that's a sweet spot for me. Once I hit 43 and up, like this is 44 and this is 48, once I hit that, it develops a different look on the wrist. It's that very, I would say, almost oversized look. And that look was very popular just a few years ago. And now we've seen the shift back to more in the 40, I would say actually more in the 39 to 42 millimeter range. And that's been exhibited by many of the top watch manufacturers. So, for that reason, I would say 40 is probably, if you're looking for a one and done, I would say 40 millimeter is probably your sweet spot for a man. Now, if you're looking for multiples, I would mix it up. I would get the 40 millimeter first, and then I would possibly go with some sizes between 40 millimeter all the way up to 44. Again, if you've got a 7.5-inch wrist like I do, and again, it's all a matter of personal preference. You may have a smaller wrist, and these may not even look big enough. Maybe you want something extremely large. Again, personal preference. But I'm not going to get into that debate. I'm just going to show. I've shown you what what it's like for me with a 7.5-inch wrist. So I hope this video helped. If it did, comment below, subscribe to my channel, share this video with others, ring that bell icon to be notified whenever I post another video, and tell me what you think. I hope this provided value. And as always, and I always provide it, I give a shout out to Archibald Chesterfield III, AC3. I didn't know about Archibald Chesterfield III, and early on, the first timepiece, and this is just a little quick for fun comment, didn't know about him until I'd had my first serious watch, which was an Omega Seamaster 300M. It's a 41 millimeter piece, and after that, I wanted to kick it up and start collecting. And obviously, after the Omega Seamaster 300M, I wanted something radically different, and at the time, the larger timepieces were huge. I mean, in popularity, they were huge, and they were also, this 48 was much larger than my 41 millimeter Omega Seamaster. So it steered me to something larger because I wanted something different. But then I found Archibald Chesterfield III, full of excellent advice. He will tell you what is a good timepiece and what is not a good timepiece, and he's very vivid in his with his vocabulary. He's an interesting cat, but he does know timepieces in and out. And I would encourage everyone, beyond the size of the timepiece that's right for your wrist, really know what you're going into, and never allow yourself to get sold by an authorized dealer, because there's nothing worse than walking out feeling like you got a bargain simply because you were sold something that's undesirable and something ultimately you won't like within a few minutes of concluding that purchase. So make sure you know what your size is before heading into an authorized dealer, and make sure in your mind you have a list of what you're interested in, so you're not sold on something else. And again, if you're looking for pre-owned, go to timepiecesfortomorrow.com, and I've got that linked within the top of this video's description. Thanks for your viewership, and y'all have a good day. Hey y'all, Captain IRIX Guy here. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to subscribe. It's youtube.com/IRIX Guy, and ring that bell icon when you do to be notified whenever I post another video. Thanks for your viewership, and y'all have a good day.